I love the Jurassic Park movies. As a kid, seeing dinosaurs convincingly come to life in Steven Spielberg's classic film was just really exciting. Not only was this actually a great movie, with a particularly great Jeff Goldblum, but it was lots and lots of fun. Cheesy premise? Sure. Did it get silly at times? Very much so. But it never stopped being entertaining, and the horror elements worked brilliantly. The Lost World, unfortunately, was really dull and failed to make the most of the whole T-Rex in the city thing, which should have been the easiest thing in the world to get right, frankly. Jurassic Park 3 has a bad rep, but I actually really like that one. It embraced the horror B-movie sensibilities of the original to an even greater extent, and even though it lacked the wonder and naivety of the original, director Joe Johnston's sequel was a good time nevertheless, and it had lots of tense action and amusing character moments. Then came Jurassic World, a reboot of sorts released in 2015, which built a new dinosaur theme park on top of the last one and basically presented a similar scenario with some modern updates of course and brand new characters. It was entertaining enough, but it failed to really get everyone on board. Maybe due to the characters not being all that great, maybe due to the boring first half hour, the overuse of CGI, maybe all of that. Whatever the case, it did well enough to warrant a sequel, Fallen Kingdom, which was released this year, so let's dig in. Fallen Kingdom sees Bryce Dallas Howard's character Claire convince Chris Pratt's character Owen to go back to the Jurassic World island Isla Nublar, I'm not saying that correctly, in order to save as many dinosaurs as possible, including Blue, as a volcano could erupt at any moment. They are sent there by Benjamin Lockwood, who was John Hammond's old partner in terms of developing dinosaur cloning technology. Unfortunately, Lockwood's assistant is revealed to be less than honest with Claire and Owen about his motivations, and the dino guano inevitably hits the fan. Now I know what you're gonna say. Isn't going back to an island full of dinosaurs that shouldn't be alive anyway, who want to eat you, while a volcano is erupting, and you're sent there by a company you know nothing about, probably a bad idea? Yes! Of course! Why would you even consider that? Well, apparently it's the thing nowadays with reboots to mirror certain aspects of the original movies, including throughout reboot sequels. Star Wars The Force Awakens emulated A New Hope, Last Jedi emulated Empire, for example. Similarly, Fallen Kingdom steals the whole pro-animal rights message of The Lost World and runs with it. Problem is, I'm still not convinced that this was actually a good plot thread to begin with. The film tries to make the point that the animals are alive, so their lives should be respected, and the real bad guys are the people trying to capture them and sell them on the black market. It's a more interesting debate than the one presented in The Lost World, which essentially boiled down to dinosaurs good, humans bad. Now stretch that to, 2 hours and a half. It was only 2 hours. Wow, that felt long. That's insane. Well, humans bad except for Jeff Goldblum, of course, I'll give them that. At least they had the good sense to spare Jeff Goldblum. But there had to be a more original idea to follow through, just saying. Reboots that also happen to be sequels are derivative enough without retelling old stories again, in my opinion. This is not the dumbest idea in the film, however. I mean, going back to the island is probably the dumbest, come to think of it, but there are others, many others. Like, if it sounds like there's a dinosaur inside a tunnel, maybe don't go in the tunnel. Just saying, don't make a new dinosaur that's smarter than you. If you can make one, I mean, if a dinosaur is in your bedroom, maybe just don't hide in the bed. Or, spoilers, don't release a whole bunch of dinosaurs into, like, where people live in the city. I mean, I could go on, but yeah, suffice it to say that this is quite probably the dumbest film in the franchise. So if you're a hater of this movie, I can't argue with that. Now, a lot of people have been trashing this movie since it came out, and I get it. I really do, I get it. There's a lot of things about this movie that I personally didn't care for. But for one thing, the bar is always quite high with the Jurassic Park movies because you're always going to compare those movies to the first one. I'd argue that it's a little bit unfair to do that with this movie since it's closer to The Lost World, but I'll get back to that in a bit. The film opens with a really cool scene actually, where this team of people who are on the island try to leave by helicopter and one guy almost gets left behind. He manages to reach the helicopter and escape the T-Rex, but just as it looks like he's managed to escape for real, he is promptly chomped by a dinosaur whale that leaps out of the water. It's very Spielberg. It's like a scene out of, Jaws, or at least one of the Jaws, the sillier Jaws sequel. And it reminded me a little bit of in the original Jurassic Park when that guy's sitting on the toilet and he gets eaten. So silly, but really funny. I've always appreciated this surprisingly dark sense of humor this franchise has. This movie was much more playful and daring with that stuff than the first Jurassic World, and I really liked that. There was a tongue-in-cheek vibe to this movie that I felt fit in well with the early movies, and it was something I felt was a bit lost in the first reboot. Not that Jurassic World was like super serious. There's a bit where the dinosaurs like eat that woman, like one eats a part of her and the other one shows up and eats another part. That was insane, but like for the most part, it was pretty tame. The little dinosaur standing alongside little dinosaur toys, the graphic way in which the bad guys get eaten, the fake teeth that Toby Jones is wearing for some reason, how ridiculously close characters come to dying by drowning or magma or being in a T-Rex cage. It's all very over the top and cartoonish, but haven't those movies always kind of been like that? If you watch the original film again, yes, it's really well made, it has some sweet, awe-inspiring moments, but it's pretty ridiculous and tongue-in-cheek. Every scene with Wayne Knight, for example, the bit with the toilet guy, the raptors in the kitchen, but it all works because there was genuine suspense there, and a lot of horror elements thrown into the mix. I remember watching the film as a kid and finding parts of it genuinely scary, but the humor in the film was childish enough that it made the scariest stuff palatable. Fallen Kingdom, I found, struck a good balance between just silly and cartoonish and suspenseful and gory. Barring, again, an overuse of CGI, I liked the cinematography quite a bit in this movie. Certain sequences in Fallen Kingdom looked just beautiful, a lot better than anything in the last movie. And that was a pretty good looking movie too. I like the fact that half of the film takes place outdoors on an island and then inside some giant mansion. They delayed the whole let's throw a T-Rex into the city thing, which we know they'll get to soon enough, and they did that really well because by having this mansion take center stage, you've got a claustrophobic setting for a bunch of people trying to survive some loose dinos, and that's pretty cool. Chris Pratt was his usual charming self, though he scales back his goofiness quite a bit in this movie. For the better, I'd say. It's a surprisingly restrained performance. While they anthropomorphize the dinosaurs a bit too much once again, I like the dinosaurs' personalities, and thanks to that, the film presents a decent case against just killing them all. Fallen Kingdom was also much better than The Lost World in that 1. I didn't fall asleep, 2. It was fun. Some have called this movie dull, but I couldn't disagree more. I wasn't bored 1 second watching this film. I actually found it pretty relentless with its action sequences. And not in an overbearing, messy, Transformers kind of way, in a good popcorn movie kind of way. One thing that really surprised me in this movie was how the characters are not really developed, like, at all. We spent a super boring half hour explaining who these people are in Jurassic World, then a bunch of time during the rest of the movie building up that romance, but here it's like, you know who they are, they're not really that interesting, you don't really care what happens to them, alright, we know that, so let's just get on with the dinosaurs. Bring in the dinosaurs. I was conflicted about this. On the one hand, the romance in the first film was a bit rubbish. On the other hand, I still don't really feel like I know either Claire or Owen. I guess the former is pro-dinosaur rights, and the other is a macho dude who loves dinosaurs, though he's too proud to admit it. Is that it? I mean, it's alright, I guess, but I would really expect the sequel to go a little bit deeper into their characters. I don't know, just develop the story a little bit more, give them some kind of character arc. It's a movie.
That is one big pile of shit.
Come on, Jeff, that's not fair. I really expect better from you. So much for the personal story of Claire and Owen. Plus, the new characters are frankly infuriating. It's like if the Scooby Gang was put on a dinosaur island, but nowhere near as fun as that sounds. I mean, think about it. You know, you've got the nerdy guy who, you know, deals with computers, and he's obviously cowardly. So he's a bit like Shaggy, right? And then you've got the hipster girl who's kind of cool, and very smart, but you know, she's a little bit bland. Then the leads is like the red-haired girl, the macho dude. You know, it's the Scooby Gang. You know, you just don't have a dog there. Well, you've got Blue. That's like Scooby-Doo. That's a dinosaur though, but it kind of falls apart when you think about it too much. But you know, it's worth thinking about. Alright, I'm exaggerating obviously, but these two new characters are really annoying. The dude's screaming all the time. We don't know who either of them are really, or why we should care about them, or why they're still alive by the end of the film, although I completely forgot about them entirely by then. But they might as well have been eaten in an entertainingly gruesome way, like one gets covered in magma or something. That could have been messed up. A bit harsh thinking about it now, but you know, at least it would have been something. I also didn't really like that little girl character. She just felt shoehorned in because you gotta have a kid in a Jurassic Park movie and a reason to release the dinosaurs in the city, I guess, however slight that reason is. She also felt like she belonged in an earlier part of the script where she'd be revealed to be a clone, but then she would become like some kind of dinosaur-human hybrid. I wouldn't put it past them to go down that route eventually, but you know what? I wouldn't be against it. It sounds hilarious.
Bring it on.
Oh, and I have to mention the criminal underuse of Jeff Goldblum in this movie. What was that? Like, just one scene? Like, one shot of him just, like, sitting in the courtroom talking about dinosaurs? That's it? Like, in the trailer? Exactly like it was in the trailer? Really? Really? That was it? Even Independence Day Resurgence understood the important value of a Goldblum-led movie, okay? It's like you've got gold, you got diamond. I don't really know if diamond's above gold, but for the sake of argument, you got gold, you got diamond, you got, you know, something galactic, like it's really hard to find, like gravitonium. Then you got unobtainium, and then you got Jeff Goldblum. You know, it's the rarest metal of all, and I've lost track of where this was going. But you get the idea.
That is one big pile of shit.
That time you're right. Yeah. It's not a good joke. Joking aside, that was just not good enough. I'm sorry. At least having come into the third act and helped the boring characters save the day, they definitely could have done something cool with that, but they didn't, so boo. Another thing I wasn't too keen on was the new monster dinosaur that's introduced later in the film. While I liked how terrifying it looked, I feel like that was also shoehorned in because you can't have a Jurassic Park sequel without some new Frankenstein creation, so here goes nothing. It just looks like a big raptor, which isn't that creative, frankly. Plus, they made it a little bit too smart. He's basically just a human serial killer at this point. And you can see a lot of this movie coming a mile away, like that dinosaur becoming out of control and killing everyone, or the mercenaries turning out to be bad guys. There are very weak reasons throughout this movie for events to happen the way they do, and I can certainly see that rubbing people the wrong way, which it did. There's an element of filler to this movie in that it's really just delaying the epic dinosaurs in the city conclusion, and it's planning to get to that in a different way than before, but also in the same way, if that makes sense. So all that can make the film a little bit redundant at times. Does the movie work? I'd say so. I still think it does, yeah. I still find it a bit underwritten and a little bit rushed at times and redundant, like I said, but overall I thought it was a pretty fun sequel. Yes, it's dumb and pretty ridiculous, but I don't necessarily expect something too cerebral from these movies, so that didn't bother me. I actually liked that the film was trying to have a bit of fun and not take itself too seriously. I thought the movie was funny, suspenseful, and action-packed enough to make it a worthwhile blockbuster and an enjoyable popcorn movie overall. There's a lot it could have done better, but it certainly captured the spirit of the Jurassic Park movies a lot better than Jurassic World, and in that sense it's a superior sequel. What it lacks in character developments, it makes up for in cool looking dinosaurs doing all sorts of crazy shit, and the human characters doing their best in the wackiest situations ever. It's silly, but it's entertaining, and it's a lot more consistent tone-wise than people give it credit for, I think. People will compare this to the original film, and they will be disappointed because, as much as I enjoyed this movie as a whole, it just doesn't have the heart that the first movie had and the unforgettable characters we still remember fondly to this day. But it's more fair to compare it to The Lost World, in my opinion. So if we do that, is it a better movie? I would argue yes. The Lost World had its moments, admittedly, and I love that Jeff Goldblum took center stage, plus the finale with the T-Rex in the city, all 5 minutes of it, was decent, but the whole thing was so uninteresting up to that point and clunky, that I'm still surprised Spielberg directed it himself. Fallen Kingdom, for all its faults, at least makes for a fun night out at the theater, and you do feel like you got your money's worth by the end. It feels like it's making things up as it goes along a little bit, and while that's not the mark of particularly good writing, it's also part of what makes this movie so consistently gripping. The Lost World was a big disappointment, especially since it came after the amazing original. But, you know, after Jurassic World, which was just okay, it's fine. It's a slight improvement, and it's leading us to the epic conclusion. It's like a bridge to lead us to that. And, you know, as far as movies go, it's fine. It's a slight improvement, and it sets things up nicely for a potentially much better sequel, so fingers crossed. Do I recommend this movie? And this is where the bad comments will come in. Yes, I do. I still think you should try and catch it on the big screen. Maybe not at full price, maybe in a matinee at a slightly cheaper price. I don't know. I still think it's worth sitting through. Don't take it too seriously. The movie certainly doesn't. And I think you'll have a good time, though I have a feeling we can all agree that it is very dumb and quite ridiculous. But sometimes I like to just sit back and let the movie do the not thinking for me. Not thinking? Yeah, that. It may not be high art, and it's nowhere near as good as the original or even Jurassic Park 3, I'd argue, but I still think it's an improvement on Lost World, and it's at least as good as Jurassic World, so take that as you will. Until next time, thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought about the movie in the comments. You probably hated it, I know. All that's left to say is welcome to Jurassic World. Again.
That is one big pile of shit.
That... You haven't heard a word I've said, have you? Beautiful bastard.
Roar, roar. Roar.
Man, they really hate this movie. Holy shit. Click on the things.